OKS Youth Ministry podcast, where three of the OKS Youth Ministers talk about youth ministry. I'm Michael Deese, and I am joined by none other than Hunter Puckett and Jeremy Crow.
Hi, who is not tucked in today?
Jeremy's not tucked in.
T-shirt and shorts.
Very
they're
casual.
not
It's
even like dressy dress shorts.
Summer Jeremy.
Summer Jeremy. I like that.
Yeah.
Look at those shorts.
Debatable,
Those are nice
debatable
shorts.
maybe with appropriate
short.
shorts, but
Well, I'm sitting
Those
down.
are what,
I'm
7-inch
sitting down.
inseam? Is
I'm
that-
sitting down. Wait till I stand
don't know.
up.
I don't think I want to.
let's stay seated.
These are mid-thigh for sure. Uplift appropriate. The rule is mid-thigh
true,
at
mid-thigh.
uplift.
Yeah.
Maywood took a step back to the knee rule this year.
Yeah.
So
do you remember the fingertips? They used to do fingertips.
I love that rule.
Yeah.
You know
I bet
why?
you did.
If you measure it with my right arm versus left,
your right
Yo,
side
right.
your right side shorts could creep up a little bit more than the left side.
You just pull them up a little bit. Roll up that
listen,
right
hey,
side.
I'm going to tell you right now, middle school Jeremy could not have laughed about this.
Oh, no.
He would have been
Yeah.
sad right now.
Been in the corner.
He would have been sad.
No, in high school we had a
friends are
dress
making
code,
fun of me.
and we had this little agenda that you had to carry around every day. And the rule was the agenda length was the shorts. So you go into the principal's office, especially mostly the females, because they would try and cheat that. Going on from where we were just talking about, what do you want to do? A little way back time machine to Freed-Hardeman University. We're not going to we won't hit the music, but
no,
I
we
do
have-
want to mention that while y'all were there, you had the rule that you couldn't wear shorts, correct?
Can't wear shorts to class
right.
or
Well,
chapel.
my senior year.
Hold on.
Oh,
We got to do it. I don't know
hold
what
on.
you're. I don't know why you're still talking.
I don't know. I'm
Way-
still talking either.
Way back.
So back in the good old days, y'all were not allowed to wear shorts.
That's right.
To classes, to chapel, to anything. Our senior year, they changed, or like my last semester, maybe they changed that. But the entire all the Bible students were scared to wear shorts to some of the professors' classes, so we still wore pants. But we were terrified of it. But we were able to wear it.
What was it that terrified you about that?
I mean, some of the scary professors.
Who's the scary professor? Justin Rogers?
Ralph.
Oh, Ralph.
Ralph would have been the one.
Oh
wearing
yeah, he wouldn't have
shorts.
cared, but I mean, like,
No,
and it was his.
Kevin
It was
Moore
also
would've been
his
shorts.
last. Oh yeah, Kevin Moore would have been in shorts, but it was also Ralph's last semester before he retired, and he got upset because they had to wear ties at that point. So he would drape it around his neck, walk into class, throw it on the ground, and then teach the class, and have somebody pick it up for him before he left.
So I have a fun story about Ralph Gilmore. My senior year, they rose tuition. Okay, so it was like the second semester of my senior year. They rose tuition by a large amount. Usually, the tuition raise year to year was like between it was about 5% raise in cost of the semester,
Which is a lot.
which was a lot. But for whatever reason, that year, that was my senior year, right before I graduated, they were like, hey, we're not doing this small one. We are doing a 15% increase. And they were like, and here's why. And they went through all these things. They did a big chapel service about it.
Because we pay attention in chapel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did whenever they said, hey, we're doing a 15% raise in our cost. And I was like, okay, I'm listening, And when that happened, people were like freaking out, okay? People
Yeah.
were posting things and saying stuff. Parents were posting stuff. Everybody was just hated Freed-Hardeman that day. And I made a post because I was graduating, and I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm not coming back to Freed-Hardeman after this semester. I'm done. Okay. And so me and Ralph had a pretty good relationship. He called me into his office, and he said, Mr. Deese, what's going on? Is everything okay? We really want you to stay here. You're really close, and was saying, I loved having you in my classes. What is there anything that I could do to help you to stay? And I said, no, there's nothing you can do to help me stay. And he said, what's going on? What? And I said, I'm graduating. I'm graduating this spring. I graduate in May. And he goes, get out of my office.
Ralph's awesome, man. I hate he retired. These students don't get to have classes with him. He was great.
He was great. He used to dress up for our debate days. Those were really funny. That was a lot of fun. But anyways, let's get into youth ministry talk.
Well,
do you have
one shorts thing? We had a day in chapel where one of the president of the SGA or whatever, he ran chapel, and on that day he had someone wearing shorts in chapel, and he had them run up and down the aisle holding a sign that says "Shorts in Chapel," and it was awesome.
That sounds awesome. Hey, I've got one question before we continue.
What's going on with my cord?
What's going on with your cord?
I didn't like it touching my legs. I got shorts on and it's touching my leg. I didn't like it.
Okay.
So I moved it up here.
The other
So for those that aren't watching our video episode, which we don't have, Jeremy has wrapped his cord around his microphone.
Let me live my life, okay? Let me live my life.
I do have one question. Why don't we call like jeans and dress pants? Why don't we call them longs?
I think we should.
Instead of shorts.
I think that's what we should call them from here on.
A men and a women.
Yeah. All right. So we are introducing a brand new series that we're going to start probably through the summer. We may start a different series about midway through the summer, about middle of July or so. But our series is going to be your first years in ministry. That's kind of the idea. And today we are going to be talking about when a ministry is not going so well. You know, things are not going well, and you are brought in to bring balance to to the youth ministry. Okay, have y'all ever had any experience with something like this?
Technically, no. Well, I mean, I came into Flint where they didn't have a youth minister.
Yeah.
But they had like a youth group. Like everything was
Big
already
Red was
rolling.
there.
Big Red was there. He wasn't full. I don't think he was full time, but he was still working part time and stuff like that. But so I came into a ministry where I didn't really have to follow anybody per se full time. But they kind of already had things rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I came into Hebron, my first full-time job was it was devoid of anything youth ministry other than Lads to Leaders. All they did was Lads to Leaders, and they did it for about 2 months a year.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing else, right? And so they had like Bible classes on a weekly basis, but outside of that, there wasn't development of relationships, there wasn't activities, there wasn't service opportunities, nothing like that. And so when I came in, it was kind of at the place where I think they were poised for that. There were families that wanted that kind of world, but there was no one doing it. And a lot of times we really picked up a lot of steam in that first 7 years there. That they were really going well, and people were saying, "Hey, you're doing a great job with this." And what really I did was kind of just came in and kind of gave everybody a kick in the pants because everybody wanted something. I just kind of got the ball rolling. But yeah, starting from scratch in a brand new place, whether it's a place that has never had youth ministry or a place that's had some kind of turmoil, some kind of situation. I've come in before where the previous youth minister had been either let go or had resigned, and there was some animosity around that. There was some frustration for families. Come into a situation before where families have more or less been running the ministry. Because there's not been someone in the staff position for a good while. And so, it's challenging when you come into a new place like that.
Yeah.
What about you, Michael? Have you had that experience before?
Have I had it before? Yeah. I went to a church. I won't talk about which church, but I went to a church and interviewed. And in that interview process, I always ask the questions of, what would you say the strengths of the church are? What are some of the strengths that this church has? And they talked about everything except for the youth ministry. I mean, they literally were like talking about how great their benevolence is, and then I said, okay, so what are your weaknesses? And they said, well, we're scared if we tell you that
you're not
going to take the job. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And they told me, this is when I was meeting with the hiring crew, all the deacons and stuff, and the children's minister and the preacher. They were all included, and they just said, we'll just be honest with you. Our youth ministry is probably the worst that it's been since we started.
Yeah.
And what it was the guy that was the youth minister there. He was hardworking and he was doing a good job, but he started working on his PhD, and he just didn't have time to put into it. And he told the elders that he was like, my goal is not to be a youth minister here forever. I want to get my PhD and I want to talk at Harding Grad. Like that's what my goal is. And he just kind of just told them that, and they were like, well, we want you to still be here. We want you to do this. He eventually made the decision himself, after they supported him and they wanted him to be there. He made the decision, I'm gonna resign on my own accord. I just don't think I can do the job here. And then I interviewed, and that was what they said. This is our weakest thing about this church is our youth ministry, and we're hoping that the person that we hire to come in gives us, makes that one of the good things about this church. And so,
and I know the circumstance because you and I have talked over the years of going in there. I do think that you fulfilled that goal.
Well,
I think you did.
Before I left, I asked the preacher. I said, "Do you remember what happened when I started here? Do you remember what happened? What y'all said?" He said, "Yeah, the youth ministry was the weakest part of this church." And I said,
"Yeah,
where would you say it is now?" And he said, "It's probably one of the most strong parts of our church now." He said, if not probably the strongest.
How much do you think it matters to a congregation's health, how they perceive or how they feel about youth ministry in that scale? How much do you think it affects the congregation as a whole?
I think it affects them just huge. I think it makes an incredible impact. If your kids are doing what they should be doing and they're being good kids, making good choices and serving and putting in that work and stuff, it's like it gives a I don't know, it's kind of like a pacemaker to the church. It keeps the heartbeat going. It keeps the heart going, and people recognize that there is people being active and that they are doing things that are beneficial to the church. Because when kids do stuff for the church, a lot of people think that it's just separate and apart from the church. But when they do things, they are supporting the church. They are being active members of the church. And I have to remind our church multiple times, like, hey, this is the church work. They are the youth ministry, they are the youth group, but this is church work. This is making a difference.
So, it's when it's done right is when that happens. Before we started recording, we talked about, like adults or different people in the congregation coming up to us and saying how great the youth group is. And though it's not us, it's just the kids are good people. I've heard, I don't know if it's Doug Field, somebody talks about the Mickey Mouse ear, where like the youth group is separate and apart from the church.
Purpose-driven youth ministry.
And so it isn't purpose-driven. Mm-hmm. So within that, it talks about the Mickey Mouse ear, like the church is the main circle, and then like the youth group's just kind of off to the side, and it's not part of it. And in a perfect world, in the correct world, the youth group is a part of the church. They're within that circle. They're working together. And like what Michael said, when things are going right, they're doing everything. They're spending time with every single member or every age group of members. They're highly involved. They're doing everything that the church needs them to do.
Right.
So when you're coming into a new place, what are you evaluating to see what the culture looks like in youth ministry in that church? What do you really, what's the measuring points for you?
I'm trying not to change a whole lot in the beginning. Like when I came into Flint, I didn't want to get rid of stuff. And if you come into a ministry, don't start hacking away as soon as you get there. See what's working, see what's not working, see what can be tweaked. And maybe it's something that doesn't need to be completely, taken off, but it just needs to change a little bit.
Yeah.
See those kind of things. The youth minister before you, no matter what job they did, a lot of those kids loved them.
Oh, yeah.
So if you come in and you start taking things away, all those kids that like the previous youth minister, they're going to start hating you.
Yeah.
In the simplest form, whether you're a great youth minister or not, they're going to hate you for that. So work slow into that. See what works, see what doesn't work. Add some of your things on top of the schedule, but try not to take a whole lot out.
Yeah. I remember asking them, like, what's the biggest thing about this youth ministry that you think it makes this weak? And they said, there is no respect for any kind of authority or following rules or anything. And they said there's this event that they call, what was it? It was like Sunday night. What
Madness.
Was it? Sunday Night Madness. That's what it was
I remember
called.
you telling me.
Yeah, Sunday Night Madness. And then they changed it over to Monday Night Madness. But
Because moving the day takes
At
the
any rate,
madness away.
so I get there. I've started the
nice
job.
rhyme.
I've moved in, and I taught my first class, and they're like, "Hey, Sunday Night Madness is tonight. Everybody knows. We're going to go over. We're going to stay here at the church, and we're going to do what we normally do at Sunday Night Madness." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds good. Let's see what's going on." And it was absolute chaos. I mean, completely total chaos. I was more like a chaperone there. I was just kind of like observing. And just to start, I'll explain how this went. First off, we have a little group of people there playing a board game, and I went over to them and I was just kind of talking with them and stuff. And one of the dads came over and was like, "Hey, let's just walk around and see what everybody's doing with me." And I was like, "Okay." So we did, and I went into one of these places, and they were playing Xbox, and they were just using the most profane language that you could use. And they're just playing Xbox and just cussing and talking about who knows what, okay? So I was like, okay. And then the guy was like, we went to the next room, and there were people throwing food just up in this little balcony area and throwing forks and stuff into this little balcony area thing. And I was like, "Hey, stop doing that." And they just looked at me. I kid you not, looked at me, turned back around, and just started doing it again. Huh. And then I mean,
that does sound fun, though.
Yeah, that does. And I was like, "Hey, stop. Like, you can't keep doing that, And what was really weird was, like, that dad that was with me didn't say anything and didn't show any kind of anything.
He had no power in this situation.
Yeah.
That's how normal that became.
That's right,
It was a normal event for those kids to do that, or the kids to be having foul language playing Xbox,
Yeah.
and they were just so used to it.
And so then we hear some commotion in the bathroom, and I thought there was like a fight or something going on. So I was going in there to save somebody's life. And I go in there, and it's a bunch of guys in just their underwear, and they're FaceTiming with girls who are in the youth group who are sitting next to the people who are playing Xbox and cussing like crazy. I was like, "What is going on here? What is going on?" And then I walk out of the bathroom and I almost get hit by a wheelchair because there's a couple kids wheelchair racing, which inevitably ends in a big hole in the side of the wall.
This sounds, I mean, yes, bad for you.
It sounds like a
awesome
good time
to watch.
It sounds like a great time.
And so that Sunday Night Madness, okay, that's what it was.
What were the guys in their underwear chanting?
Nothing. They were just talking about stuff and like flexing their muscles. And we're talking,
Yeah, because you need to be in your underwear to do that.
That's right. Yeah. And so
That's what I do.
this dad that was with me was just like, "Well, this is pretty typical." I was like, "Dude, this is like, why are
Chaos.
we?
This is
why are we
madness.
doing this?
This is wrong.
This is madness.
Is Sparta." No.
Yeah.
And so I just said, "Okay, we're done." So I called parents. I sent out a message, called parents, had them all come get the kids, and I said, "We're done. We're not doing this anymore." And so we never did that again. We never did Sunday Night Madness. But what we did do in like 3 weeks from there was we had a Sunday Night Devo at the church building. And that's all I did. I just said, I changed it from Sunday Night Madness to Sunday Night Devo. That's it.
Yeah.
And guess what happened? We got there. Everybody was calm. They all stayed in the little fellowship area. We talked and we hung out. We played a couple board games. And then we had a devotional. And then everybody went home.
Sometimes changing the name does a lot.
Yeah, I think just rebranding things
Yeah.
can completely change.
Well, and if you ask the kids, what are they expecting when they come to a Sunday night devotional versus a Sunday night madness? It's going to be two completely different answers.
Right.
And it's something as simple as changing the name to something that's a little bit more spiritual, a little bit more, we'll say, focused on. They're going to come and they're going to show up, and that's what they're going to do. Because a lot of our kids, and even probably even those kids, they want to learn. They want to have the spiritual time. They want those things, and it's just you allowing time for that to happen.
Yeah. And so I think when you are going in to a new work, wherever you are, whether the ministry is great, whether it's bad, doesn't matter. When you go in, you're spending the first few months just analyzing data.
Yeah.
You're going in, you're watching the kids, you're understanding how these youth ministries work. When you say, "Hey, everybody listen up," and nobody does, but then one kid says, "Hey, listen up."
You found a leader.
You found your person who's their focus, not even necessarily a leader, but someone who's on your side.
Yeah.
And
That sees the turmoil.
right. And so you you look for things like that, and you evaluate. You said don't change up too much when you first get there. We didn't change things that whole first year. We didn't change anything, and I just evaluated, and thank God I did, because there were some great events. Uplift. When I first got there, I was like, we'll probably just cut Uplift, and because that's a good place to cut something in the summer, and we'll just continue on and stuff. But then I went to Uplift, and I was like, this may be the best thing that we've ever gone to. This is incredible.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable. And
y'all are
kids,
leaving next week for it.
That's right.
We're leaving Sunday.
Yeah.
Sunday.
I've started a completely new work and everything, and I'm still taking kids there.
Yeah.
Because it's such a great event.
I would venture to say best event on our calendar in the year.
Coleman. I would
Close
say
to it,
close
if
to
not-
it at least. And it's a good event, and all of those things are things that we when you start a new ministry, you have to evaluate each event that is a normal, typical event that's planned. And sometimes all it takes is just reframing what you're doing, and sometimes you have to overhaul everything.
So you talked about some of the first impression stuff that you encounter and kind of how you get to a place where you start to cast a long-term vision and goal. But let me ask this. When you come in, and this may be tougher when you're a young guy and you're absolutely new to youth ministry and you haven't had any experience, but, say coming into a new job now, like Hunter has been blessed to be at one place in his entire ministry, which is awesome.
Hashtag blessed. Thank you, elders.
I hope that continues to be the place.
Thanks, Adi.
But if it were to change and he had to go somewhere different in the future, not going to happen. But he would have to establish credibility in a new place, right? Now he's got 10 years plus of experience that he could build off of that, and he's been through some things, right? But for new guys coming into a new work, or somebody that's seasoned but they're coming in new work, they have to pretty quickly establish, I'm a trustable person, right? I'm a reliable source. I'm valuable to this ministry, and I'm worth listening to. How do you establish that credibility early on?
Well, and I don't think I can speak at that part, but I do want to say this, because there's so many people that you're having to establish this credibility with. You're establishing with the kids and the youth group. Obviously, they want to see that you're trustworthy. They want to see that you truly care, that you're there for them. You have to establish that with the parents. You have to show the parents that, hey, I'm here to help you out. I'm not here to overpower you or undermine your authority. I'm here to work with you.
Right.
And then you're also here to show the elders, the deacons, hey, I'm here to serve. I'm here to be another minister. We're going to say, it's a different job than the preacher, but I'm here to be a minister of this congregation for whatever that situation might be. And then you have the rest of the congregation. I'm not just, especially for in y'all's situations, I'm not just this youth minister who just goofs off the entire time. Or I'm not this young guy who just plays games forever, but we're here to grow spiritually. Yeah. We're here to push these kids. We're here to show these kids what Jesus looked like.
Yeah. I think this idea of establishing credibility, I always ask if I can, I won't say address the church, but if I can preach at some point in that first month that I'm there, because I want to give the church a vision of what I have. And so that vision includes a lot of the things that I talked about in the interview process. I'm interviewing, I've talked to them, I've said, hey, here's what I've got, this is the way I'm going to do my ministry.
There's a reason they hired you. They liked what you said.
Exactly. And so, and I've talked to the elders about it, then they're on board with what I've said, that's what we want. And so I go in that first lesson, that sermon that I'm doing, and I just basically lay out and show biblical, when I'm talking in the interview, I don't have to go through the Bible and show things like that. I just say those things. And then if they ask, I've got biblical examples of all of that, but then whenever I'm preaching, I bring in the Bible, I bring it in, and I use the Bible as my outline for these talking points and these things that we're doing, because that it does establish credibility, not just with the students, not just with their parents, but the entire church is like, this guy knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about, and we're going to buy in. And then you take the kids over to the side and you just tell them, hey, I love you guys, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that you're where you are when you graduate.
Yeah.
Where you need to be when you graduate.
So one of the things that I did this last year, and this is, I've been at Coleman for almost 10 years now, so this isn't like something I did in the first year there, but it's something that I found to be interesting. You're talking about, gathering data. I asked the students, we were talking about something in class, Steve and I were teaching, and and he said, what do you want out of this youth ministry, right? And this asked the students, and they just started listing stuff, right? And we wrote it on the board. Everything they said, we wrote it down. And he said, okay, what do you want out of Jeremy specifically? Like, what are you looking for out of your youth minister?
Candy.
And so they started listing all this stuff. And I'll tell you, man, if you ever want to just know what direction your kids are thinking you should be, just point blank ask that, right? Because I got some information, and a lot of it I thought they would say, and I agreed with. Some of it I was like, oh, wow, that kind of surprised me that was important to them. And so it was good to understand, and that, recognizing what their desire is out of that position and in my role, if I can start to address those needs and those desires, that begins to establish some trust and credibility, some rapport with my students, with their parents, and it'd be worth, surveying parents and saying, hey, what are you looking for out of this ministry? And especially in that first year, right? Yeah. If I have no idea what they need or what they're hoping for, just point blank, send a survey out and ask, what would help your child in this ministry? What do you see as valuable in this ministry?
Yeah. And at Buford, I guess I can speak on this as I'm growing up, but while I was in the youth group at Buford, we had a transition in youth ministers. We had Brandon Edwards in the beginning. He kind of not created the youth group, but created this youth ministry. And then he left 2 or 3 years into it, and then Jeremy Pate came along. And I already knew, kind of harboring some anger with Brandon leaving, and not anger, but just being upset Brandon left, and I wanted him to stay while I graduated. It was like the end of my senior year, and Jeremy comes in, and my original thoughts was, I'm just not gonna like this guy. I'm gonna try my best just to get through this last summer, get to Freed-Hardeman, start my own ministry. And then he showed up to one of my baseball games before he got hired full time. And he showed up and he waited. He saw the entire game. He waited till the end. I walked off the field, and like one of the elders who we're good family friends with, and then Jeremy, they met me after. We sat there and we talked for a while. I got to know him. I thought that was a great way to build credibility within the kids of the youth group themselves.
Yeah.
Because he came into a youth group knowing that it was going to be a little bit hostile, of losing one, and this was on Brandon's own choice, but losing one youth minister, the next one's coming in, and you're like, wow, he's not going to be the old one, and this comparison that happens.
Oh yeah.
And then for him to come in, but from my perspective, they're both so different, and they're both big reasons of I take things from both of their ministries and use it in my own ministry.
Yeah.
But they're just so different, and even Jeremy knew, and he came in and he really clung to those middle schoolers, those like 9th grade and below students a lot more than like the seniors. And I always wondered that until I became a youth minister and I saw that. Well, he did that because they're on their way out. They're pro, whoever the last guy was, they're coming in, and it's not like he ignored us. I don't want to say that. He still spent a lot of time with us, but you could really tell he was really focusing on this younger group. And it was so, as that younger group gets older, he had built that credibility, he built that relationship, and he's able to continue in his ministry there.
So one of the things that we've talked about evaluating things and checking things out. I think that this should go without saying, but we're going to say it anyway because we're talking about how to get going. You go into a circumstance, a scenario with patience and prayer. As you're entering a new ministry, a new area, you go into it knowing there's evaluation to be done. There are things that I'm hoping for, that I'm praying for. We see this example in David, when David comes back to find their city laid waste in, I think it's 1 Samuel 30. And he, before he goes and tries to chase down the Amalekites and deal with this problem, he goes to God and says, what would you have me to do? Right? He prays to God, asks God's guidance. We see it in Nehemiah when Nehemiah is tasked with rebuilding, right? Mm-hmm. He in chapter 2, verse 10, 11, he starts evaluating the walls. He walks the perimeter things. He's evaluating what the condition is. And then in verse 17, he says, you see the trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruin. And so taking the time to evaluate, to patiently gather data to figure out how do we address this and how do we move forward is important.
Yeah. I think another way to, and I call it, getting people to buy in. One of the good ways to get people to buy in to this, to your ministry and into you is, man, you don't realize how big of a difference it makes when your students have someone who's advocating for them.
Yeah.
Who is their advocate. Because a lot of times our churches have no idea what our youth group is doing and what our youth ministry is doing. They have no idea what kind of events you're doing, because they're not going to pay attention to it, because the majority of your church is probably not going to be involved in the youth ministry, which I don't like. I want them to be involved, but they're not going to pay very much attention. And so when you go on trips and when you go on things, when you do stuff, at the end of the summer every year, I always have a big youth ministry meeting thing where I'm the preacher and I get up and I say, look at the things that our students have done this summer. And I show pictures and I talk about stuff and I talk about how they are members of the church. And I even call out the church sometimes. Like, I mean, this last one that I did, I said, when was the last time you went on a mission trip? When was the last time that you served at this capacity?
Yeah.
You know, talking about work camp and when we went and helped with the children's home in Corinth, Mississippi. And I was like, when was the last time any of y'all did this? Well, these students did this just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And they put themselves out. They had a whole summer. They had a whole week where instead of, you know, doing whatever they want to do, playing video games and eating Cheetos, they decided we're going to spend this entire week helping people in our community, you know, and we're going to spend this whole week helping out people who are less fortunate than us. And that is a huge deal. Especially when you're thinking that this is 14-year-olds that are doing this.
So I'll tell you, for us, man, one of the things that I try to do, and I'm bad at managing social media stuff, but man, if you can post something after an event, early on especially, to like show what the kids did and what they've been involved with. We had something just yesterday, right? We worked at the police department and washed a bunch of cars and served a lunch. It wasn't a big deal, it wasn't a hard thing to do, but it was something that our kids were serving. And I got home, it's important, you know, the event's over that night, go post something about it. I do not have an incredible, beautiful influencer level, you know, campaign of things. It's literally I just stick some pictures on Instagram and put some music on it. But what happens is our congregation sees our teens active. And that builds that culture, that community around, and we've got a great youth group, right? Mm-hmm. When the congregation is buying in, like Michael's saying, to the vision and mission of what we're trying to do in youth ministry, it makes our job easier. It makes people realize we are doing our job, we're working hard, but it also makes ministry flow better. It makes things work better. It makes the students have more excitement about it. There's so much synergy just from putting out just a simple little Instagram or Facebook post.
We used to do, like, for all of you veteran youth ministers and youth workers and volunteers, we used to put pictures out.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, you would go to
bulletin
Walgreens
boards.
and you would post, you'd print out 100 pictures and you would put them up all over the youth wall.
Yeah.
And people saw those when they walked through the building. You know, they
And that
saw
was-
those
that was-
pictures.
so that was visible.
Yeah, that was something. Hey, this is what we're doing. Here's the stuff that we're doing. And we don't do that anymore. You know, when was the last time you went to a church and saw just tons and tons of pictures of what the things are that weren't older than 5 years? Yeah. You know, because I went to this church not long ago and I was looking at the pictures and I was like, I'm pretty sure that guy's a youth minister now. Like,
yeah,
that guy's 32. And this church, you know, this was in the year 2025. You know, I was like, these are not updated. And so I'm not a big fan of doing the pictures and updating them and all that stuff because people don't pay as much attention to that as they do the social media stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm in full support of posting those things on your social media. I do a terrible job of this. I mean, I'm horrible at it. But luckily, I have a wife who loves me who takes care of it for me.
Yeah. And last night, I say that like I did it last night. I was laying in bed trying to post this thing before I went to sleep. And I was like, Jessica, how do I put music on the reel?
Yeah.
And I handed it. She's like, just give me your phone. And so she does it. By the way, anybody of our teams listening, 100% that ain't me. That's Jessica every time that does the cool reels. But I'll say this. One of the things that I think is so important in establishing a new ministry or getting in a new place, and Hunter hasn't had to do this yet, hasn't had this experience from moving to another place, but it is so hard to not compare it to where you've been before. It's so hard to not do that. Not because you want them to feel bad about or you want them to feel like they're better than or whatever. It's just that's the experience you speak from, right? It's so hard for me coming into Coleman to not say, well, at Cedar Lane, we blah, 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 blah. Or, you know, you coming in at Valley View, we blah, blah, or whatever, right? It's so hard to not reference that thing and to pull from that and say, well, this worked really well there, so it's obviously going to work well here. The reality is people don't give a rip about where the place you used to work, what they did. They want to know what we're doing in ministry here. Now, you absolutely will pull ideas from previous experiences, but try to avoid that mantra of, well, at so-and-so we did this, or at my previous church we did this, or this group did this better, or whatever, because that's going to tear the kids down more than build them up.
Yeah.
Or comparing youth groups.
Yes.
Like when I first got to Flint, I was interning for 3 summers, and I didn't have a youth minister to kind of like lead me in the direction I needed to go. But what I did have, and I was blessed with, was some really good youth ministers around me. And I could look at Beltline, I could look at Coleman, I could look at Austinville, I could look at all these churches and see what they're doing. And it's like, oh, well, maybe I need to start doing that. Maybe I need to. And sometimes it just doesn't fit. Yeah. I think a great thing about that is the Philip Jenkins, the Lunch Ladies, like his involvement group or whatever he calls it. And like, that's a great idea. But for a lot of churches, that does not fit. For a lot of churches, you're going to have to scale that to make it fit your congregation.
Right.
And I think that's the same across the board. There's so many great ideas, and there's so many things that we'll see on social media that we're like, oh man, we need to start incorporating that. And maybe we can. Maybe it's a great idea. Maybe the kids love it and all these things, or maybe we can't. And maybe it's us realizing, hey, we don't need to compare our ministry to other people's ministry because our churches are so different. Our budgets are so different. Our elders allow us to do things differently, things on those lines. And it's not doable.
I know I was at a youth ministry conference, and I'm sitting by a guy who had been doing youth ministry for about a year and a half. And we were listening to Philip Jenkins do an awesome job describing one of the ministry things that they do at Mount Juliet.
Yeah.
And he was describing it, and I was like, this is unbelievable, the work that has gone into this. It's so well done, and I know, that it's being successful, and there's so much going on. And he was up there talking, and this guy kind of nudged me, and he was like, dude, I'm never going to be as good as him. And I was like, he was like, I just don't think that it's even worth my time to be doing, And I just stopped. His name's Jackson. I won't give a last name, but shout out to Jackson. And I was like, dude, this isn't youth ministry like the majority of us are here. He's not telling us exactly how we need to do things because he has 25 youth deacons because it's at Mount Juliet, know. And so he's able to just tell one of the 25 to take over this ministry, and then they do. And I said, I've got 1 or 2 youth deacons, and one of them, he's just more of just a volunteer kind of guy who likes to do stuff with the youth group, and recognizing that and saying, let's scale this down, but we do want to incorporate the message. We do want to incorporate.
And there's some
message.
great ideas he's putting out there. But
exactly.
How do we do something that might get the same results? Maybe not the same program, right?
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll have people that want to do. In the past we've done our Decatur work camp. I've had people reach out to us and say, hey, how can we make that happen? It's like, well, you might not be able to make it happen the way that we do. I mean, there's a lot of funding that goes into it. There's a lot of kids. I mean, you're talking about 5 or 6 large years. It's something that 5 or 6 large churches are doing and putting kids into, and it's taken years to build up. And that's what we have to view is understand where you are, understand your church, understand your budget, understand the resources that you have. I'm in class right now for this summer. One of my classes is small church limited resource ministry, and that's a big thing. Is just you're working on limited resources. Not everybody has this Mount Juliet where you have 4 4 teen interns, and then you have summer interns, and you have deacons, and you have all these helpers, and the part time or where the part time youth minister.
Youth minister. What is that called?
In fellowship.
But not everybody has that, and you have to be able to dial that back and see what you can do in your ministry.
Yeah.
Not comparing to other people, not comparing to the guy before, not comparing to the guy down the road, not comparing to different areas, but doing what you can with your youth group.
So one of the things, I went to Worship Leader Institute, which is put on by Acapella Ministries, and they give you this wristband like the first day. And it's one of these, little, I call it Lance Armstrong bracelets, but the little rubber bracelet. Live Strong. And it says, on the bracelet, it says, what is best for your church? And so when they talk about it, they said, okay, we're going to teach you a lot of things about how to be a better worship leader and how to do things better, in worship ministry. But he said, not every one of these things is going to fit right with your congregation, right? And so it said, you need to, as you learn these things, figure out what's best for your church. What will help your church grow in worship? Well, think about that for youth ministry. Like, everything that you see in a book or you hear on a podcast or you hear, whatever, except for our podcasts, they're all good. But everything that you hear from every source may not be what's best for your specific congregation. but you need to take time to evaluate like what's best for this group and what can I, eat the meat, spit out the bones, whatever you want to say. What can I pull from this or glean from this that will bless us in that way?
Yeah.
Let me ask one thing as we're getting closer to the end here. Let me ask you how do you evaluate what things you're bringing into that ministry personally? And I mean, like, what are you coming in with emotionally, spiritually? How do you assess that, and how do you either address that, deal with that, or leverage that? Right.
I think being completely open and honest is step one in this. Talking to your students and saying, if you need anything, then I'm going to be here. But if you tell them that, then they're going to be like, okay, but they're probably not going to come up to you and talk to you about that stuff. But when you are worshiping and you notice that one of your kids is just breaking down, and then after the service, you kind of take them over to the side without anybody realizing what you're doing, and you just say, hey, is everything okay? I want to be here for you. I want to help you. What can I do? Are you all right? And sometimes that conversation leads into something. I mean, I just told them about something that happened at camp, last couple weeks ago, and about one of the students there who was kind of in a spot, and they just kind of opened up to me about stuff. And I was like, it wasn't anything that I just came out of my, it was just, I noticed someone was hurting, and I went over to ask them what was going on, and when that happened, that person then opens up to you, and I've had kids come to me since I've started ministry who have been in really dark places. I've had kids who've been had really lame things that I was like, this is not something that they should be really upset about. But they are.
I know what thing you're talking about.
And so, like, just helping people through whatever that challenge is, but making sure that you're there emotionally, and then with a spiritual thing to it. I think the best way to show a church or your youth ministry that you care about them spiritually is to just spend time on your Bible classes.
Yeah.
Please make a plan and have a plan laid out, and take time to study and know what you're talking about in your Bible class so that they know what you're doing. They see teachers every day who have absolutely no care in the world about what they're teaching. And it's their least favorite teachers. They're like, we hate this guy. He doesn't ever prepare for anything. He doesn't do anything. He just sits up there and rambles for 5 minutes and then lets us play on our phones. We can't stand this guy. He's annoying. He's terrible. And then he gives us a bad grade in a test because we don't know what he's teaching because he didn't teach us anything.
Yeah.
And a lot of times youth ministers do that.
Yeah.
But I get it. We're busy. We have more important things to do. Quote unquote. But
I'm feeling a little conviction because I'm not done with my class for Wednesday night yet, and I got to finish that up. So,
and so please spend time with your Bible lessons, with your classes, with your devotionals, with the things that you're preparing, because kids know whether or not you're doing that.
Yeah, they do.
Ironically, a couple weeks ago, somebody asked me if you were to go and start a new ministry, what would be the first thing that you do? And I didn't really give them a good answer, and I feel bad. So whoever asked me that, I'm terribly sorry. But I really got thinking about it. And what I noticed is something that we had on this list, but it would probably be what I do first. It says, meet everyone, ask good questions. And I think that'd be the first thing that I would do. It is personally spend time with each person in the youth group, have them over, them and their family, have them over for dinner at the house. If I had to move to another congregation, invite them over, have dinner, ask them what they need, what they want, what we've been saying. What do you want to see out of this youth group? What do you need out of this youth group? And then ask the parents, hey, how do you expect this to go? Meet every single person in the youth group, all the parents. And not only that, don't stop there. Meet the entire congregation. Depending on the size of the congregation, that'd take a while for a Coleman. But meet as many people as you can. Get to know them. And by doing that, they start to see that you care about them and you want to see this grow and you want to see them grow. Yeah. Something that frustrates me are the elders that think youth ministry can be part-time. We're blessed to be full-time youth ministry.
Whether you're paid or not, it's full-time.
Yeah, it's full-time regardless. I mean, it's 24/7. And we have fantastic wives that understand ministry, that understand that, hey, we're going to be gone a lot. We might be home in the middle of the day for a little bit, but every single night we're probably gone doing something else. And it's the times that you spend at ball games. I need to be careful about this. And I mentioned it before. Do I care about who wins the tennis game? Probably not. But I know that they care that I'm present.
Yeah.
Does it care? Do I care if Asa Priola throws 18 touchdowns in a football game? No, that'd be cool. But he wants to see me at the game.
Right.
And it's the same thing for everybody. They want to see you investing in them, so they'll invest in you.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the parents. When the parents see you investing in their kids, when they see you taking time out of your day to go to the sports games, to go listen to whatever they're doing, to go to the theater programs, to go to the chorus concerts, whatever that might be, they're going to be more willing to make sure that their kids are investing in you as well.
Yeah.
They're going to go out of their way to make sure that they're driving their kids to the events, that they're signing up for the events, that they're going to miss, you know what, well, Hunter showed up to a couple games, so we're going to make sure that we miss this one game so we can go do something for him.
Yeah.
Or one of his events, not for him, but one of the events that he's planned. Now, I feel like that's just if I were to redo it, if I were to go somewhere else and start brand new, I think that's where I would start. It is meeting every single person, getting into their world, seeing their needs, asking them questions, and seeing what the church really needs. Because the church can, and I mean this in a nice way, the church can lie in that interview.
Right.
They could have sat there, for
sometimes.
Michael's situation, they could have sat there and said, hey, you know what? We have no flaws in our church. Our youth group, it's amazing. It's fantastic. It's been, whoever was here before, they did a great job, and we're just going to keep it rolling. And you could get there and you could see that Sunday Night Madness and see what madness it actually was and sit there and go, man, I might have bitten off too much.
Yeah.
But instead, it's you had the honesty. You kind of understood what you're getting into, and you're making these connections early.
And what Hunter just said, you're not going to be able to address every single concern and need that every one of those people tells you. But at least you get a good litmus test of kind of what needs to be addressed. You know, what across the board is consistently frustration for people, and how can we start to address those things?
Yeah. And I think just to kind of keep with that thread of thought and everything, there's times where kids feel that they're not being included in things, you know, and finding those kids. And I look for them whenever my first month or so, first 3 months while I'm at a new ministry is I want to meet every kid who's on the roster, you know. And at some point, sometimes there's kids who they've kind of moved on and they're not on there anymore, but or they're on there still, but they don't actually come, you know. But having to meet every kid, it helps you say, hey, if you know Johnny Bruce over here that I have on my sheet here, if he shows up. You tell your secretary, tell the preacher, tell the elders, hey, if Johnny Bruce shows up, I want you to point him out to me because I want to go meet him.
Yeah.
Okay? And I did that where I'm at. You know, I told several people I want to know who these people are. And when that person showed up, I had not met them. They'd not been to any of my classes, come to any youth group things. And when I met them and talked to them, guess what happened? They started coming to our youth group stuff. You know, there's at least 4 or 5 kids who are involved in our ministry and helping in our ministry and serving in our ministry because I asked somebody, show this person to me and I want to go meet them. I want them to know that they're important to this ministry and that the things that they have to offer is important. So,
That's right.
Anyways, well, do y'all have anything else y'all want to talk about before we go?
I think we have tiptoed near some things that I think we're going to hit on next episode about your own personal stuff.
Yeah.
As you start into a new work, but we'll get into it next time.
Okay.
Well, we look forward to you listening to the next episode.
Yeah.
And
no, wait,
we
whoa.
hope
No, follow our social media pages, OKS Youth Ministry on Instagram and the Facebook page, but also check out our website at oksyouthministry.com. We also, Jeremy has brought in a few more of the yellow and blue hats, and so if you would like to purchase one of those, you can go online and order them. Or
very California Golden Bears, maybe.
California Bears.
Bears.
Oh. So if you would, check out the website, check out our social media pages, and most of all, like and subscribe. Please leave comments. We still haven't gotten any responses from our last show. That's why we switched to this. But if you have any questions or anything that you'd like, please send us an email or text message or whatever. And we hope your ministry is blessed.
Dang it.
You gotta keep it.
Thanks for joining us today in the important conversation of youth ministry. Go and follow us on Instagram and check out oksyouthministry.com for more information about our upcoming episodes. We'll be dropping a new episode every Wednesday morning, and we look forward to talking with you again next week. And hey, it's okay to be the OKS youth minister around, but let's all strive to be just a little bit better.